Am I frozen right away? I felt like I was frozen like right off rip. Way to start the stream. Anyways, hello everyone. Welcome to another live show, another live She Knows Arsenal. Make sure you guys are liking the video and subscribing to the channel. It does feel like I might be a little frozen or something. It will hopefully smooth out. My internet was just fine until I started trying to stream. Every time, every single time. But try to keep it positive. Try to just work through the kinks. Let's see. It feels like the internet just went out everywhere. Let's see. It's here. Let me just check to make sure. It just feels like it's slow. Give me just 2 seconds, guys, to try to figure this out. Just make sure you guys can see me. Yeah, I can see. So hopefully you guys can see because I just checked. Okay. All right. So let me know if you guys can see me and hear me. So listen, there's a couple things I want to talk to you guys about. Frozen here. Hold on. Give me 2 seconds. Okay. I'm good again. Yeah. Good again. Not. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I think I'm good. Okay. I think I'm good now. Let me just pull this so I can see it at the same time because now I'm like super insecure about it. Anyways, we haven't spoken since the Champions League final. And so I think a lot of discussion around Arsenal has kind of ensued after that, which I think, Inter loses 5-0 in a Champions League final, and somehow the discussion, a very large prevailing discussion, was around Arsenal and Arteta's weird comment about us being the best team in the competition. And I think one of my favorite sayings of all time is a hit dog will holler. And essentially, if you don't know what that saying means, it means even if somebody's saying something and you feel offended, it might be because you feel like they're talking about you. And I feel like when Arsenal fans watch a team play really well and they have good attacking players or the types of players that maybe we would want, the conversation starts to happen on the timeline, right? And so it's kind of like when Spurs and Chelsea won their European trophies, even though that didn't have anything really to do with us and we don't want to be in Europa League and we are in Champions League, it still became a conversation around Arsenal because those insecurities come up, right? About not winning trophies and whatnot. And I think something very similar happened during the Champions League final where, we've come off a pretty underwhelming season. I've had many conversations around, people being upset that I said that I did not enjoy the season, right? And so there's a lot of stuff going on, but I think what that final really did was showed us that if you didn't see it with Slot in the Premier League, then you damn sure saw it in that Champions League final. Football is evolving. I know that Guillaume Balaguer, I respect him. I like him a lot. But he came out after the game and said that Luis Enrique had taken, a lot of he had kind of copied or was very what's the word? Heavily influenced by Pep Guardiola. And basically, if you're playing a similar style, just keep going and it'll come together. And I just felt like that was just a wee bit disingenuous because maybe Pep did play a similar style way back when, but he definitely doesn't play that style now. And the style that we see Pep playing now is a style that Arteta has taken a lot of cues from, and it's not anything like what Luis Enrique was doing with PSG. Nothing. That was some of the most scintillating, fun, attacking football that we've seen. And it's not like we haven't seen it before, but on the biggest stage, for them to be able to play that way. And Luis Enrique, one of the quotes that was coming out from him was that they wanted to put on a show. That's just not something that I feel like as Arsenal fans over the last couple of maybe seasons we felt that we were putting on a show or watching scintillating attacking football and going into big matches and not playing scared, but actually playing to be the more aggressive, team. And you saw Inter were kind of backed into a corner. They couldn't really deal with all the changing of positions and, players moving out of certain places. And I just felt like for Guillaume Balaguer to make it seem like that was Juga de Posición, I'm so sorry. But when I think of that type of style, I'm thinking everybody's in there locked in boxes, they're locked in areas, and nobody moves, nobody switches positions, nobody does any of those things. That was not Juga de Posición. I'm sorry, it just wasn't. And it was just like the complete opposite of what we do. And so I think that little bit of like insecurity around the way that we play and the lack of fun and creativity and goals, I do think that watching PSG play that way has made maybe Arsenal fans see that, or maybe even question, is football evolving away from the way that we're playing? Because a couple of years ago, a lot of Arsenal fans were sitting up on podcasts saying, United need to do this like we're doing it. Chelsea need to do it like we're doing it. They're rebuilding and, inverted fullbacks and getting these big players, and you're too small and you don't have enough this, you don't have enough that. And now we're watching teams like Liverpool and PSG and even Barcelona play really good football without these same principles. They don't have 6'5" giants in midfield. They don't stand in their positions. They're not defending with the entire team back. Like it just feels as though the way that we have been trying to build and the way that we're trying to play our football it might be something that's going out of fashion. And will Arteta be able to keep up, or will he double down on a style that does feel like people are moving away from? Let's see what you guys are saying in the comment section before I continue on. Marco says, for Doué to be in that position and then have Hakimi so high up, that's terrific from the coach. That's not Arteta ball. That's not even Pep ball. Enrique coached that. I want that. Lawrence says, football is going to go through another transition. Watch how teams go back to a more attacking style of play. And Lawrence, I'll piggyback off of that by saying that, there was a long period of time where the false nine was super, like that was all people were doing. Everybody was doing false nine, false nine, false nine. And now you're seeing teams revert back to traditional number nines. You see teams like, like Fulham or, just random teams in the Premier League with these good, like like traditional type of number nines. And we're still false nining it away. So, and we're trying to get, I feel like, a more traditional nine, but it's more than that. It's football does run in cycles. And so, yes, it's not the first time that we've seen this type of, football, but a lot of teams are starting to take those cues. And if the best teams in the world, the Barcelonas, the PSGs, and the Liverpools are playing that style, you can make an argument that having the counter style of that will help us. But ultimately, I do feel like Arsenal fans will prefer us to go to a more free-flowing, fluid attacking style where players are, switching positions and just having a little bit more fun. PSG looked like they were having a good time on the biggest stage in a moment where I do think that Arsenal tend to get a little bit more tight, but they weren't trying to defend for their lives. They weren't trying to protect a 1-0 lead. They weren't, have all the guys behind the ball and just, trying to batten down the hatches. They were confident. And I want to see my team at least have a little bit of that confidence, especially in the attacking third. I think if Arsene wasn't so maybe ethical, he'd probably be looking down. He probably was looking down at that game and thinking, yeah, that's good fucking football, And so, I wanted to bring this up just because it is going to tie into the conversation around how we are looking in the window and how we're looking to try to, to bring in new players and stuff like that. And are we doubling down on a style that may not work or may not be the type of football that brings you to titles in 2025 slash going into 2026? Or is it all okay if we just finish this team and add these pieces and play our style, it'll be fine. Nabi says Arsenal have no left winger, Jess. That's how I look at it. John says if Liverpool get Gyökeres, just forget about any trophies for the next 4 years. Theo says PSG is 2008 Arsenal with unlimited funds. Marco says true. Arsenal with Rice and Gabriel and any of his team. Oh, let's see. Rainmaker says, hey, Jess, hope you're doing well. I am doing well. Thank you for asking. Lars says, Arteta has turned us into next season FC. So yeah, it definitely is something that I do think that, because I had asked you guys before not too long ago, how you guys feel about the style, and do you feel like Arteta needs to keep some of those like standards that Arsenal is known to have to play good football and stuff? Do you guys care about that? But I don't even think it's just about the style and what it looks like. I think obviously you want to be entertained and you want to have fun and you want to like the football that you're watching, but that is the type of football that's actually winning the big trophies. La Liga was won by a team that plays good football. Ligue 1 was won by PSG, and also the Champions League was won by PSG, and they play good football. The Premier League was won by Liverpool, and they play a good style of football. So are we just trying to double down on something that we never even really got 100% correct? Should we just disband it and just go to a more free-flowing style? I don't know. Imran says Arsenal need a culture revolution from a playing perspective, but more importantly, an organization leadership perspective. Let's see. Shamara says Chelsea ain't getting Rodrigo. They want Gittins. We'll get to the actual rumors and stuff, in just a second. I just wanted to open up with this because I think it's an important conversation. Remy says PSG demolish Inter, cut right through them. When you play like that, it can destabilize opponents. Inter looked so dejected after PSG went up 2-0. It's 100% true. I just can't help but feel like the best teams play this type of style, and something else that's really important to look at as well is I don't think we play the exact same type of football as Man City, but I do think there are a lot of those same elements in there. But this could end up not meaning anything, but Pep, is bringing in Reinders and is bringing in Turkey. Those are two players that they are getting. And those are attack-minded, like flair players, that he's bringing into his team. He's also bringing in, Ait Nori. If you bring in Ait Nori, you're basically saying that you're going to bin off this idea of Gvardiol playing left back, which is something similar to what we do. Which feels awkward, but when it works, and you're going to more of like a baller. He is a North African baller, that plays left back, but he's more of like kind of like a midfielder, and he can get into the attack, and he's super techy and press resistant and all those types of things. If Pep moves away from this style and we're still doing it, it's going to look strange because they perfected it, won things, and now if Pep has decided to move away from it, we're going to look really silly continuing on with the style that we couldn't even perfect or win anything with. And Pep's already moved on to something else because he's sacked his entire staff. He sacked his entire coaching staff and is now, wants new ideas. And I'm just like, if his new ideas are to play free flowing and allow his attackers to attack and, to kind of go away from this stiff kind of juga de position type of thing and to go more to traditional style, yeah, it's gonna look strange. Shamaria says Pep's defo changing his style of play next season. Clement says offensively on the pitch, there's no individual brilliance on our team, and even with the us playing a similar style to City, to me it always lacked the X factor and the just elite level talent in certain areas. Like Pep never went with, two DMs in midfield. Even though they play a similar style, they never played two DMs in midfield and, no creativity and no difference makers up top ever. And we go with no difference makers up top, no creativity in a similar style. Like, come on, so I get why people are looking at it and they're like, because I'm kind of feeling like, so yeah. Nabi says, Mikkel, right? Little chemical doctor listens. He says, trust the process. So yeah, hopefully says, Keenan says, hopefully the players we bring in have creativity and flair. If Arteta leaves after the season, it will help with the transition. And yeah, I think, you're looking at Liverpool, a team that already was more creative, playing a better brand of football, really entertaining style of football that was also successful. It wasn't like they were just wide open at the back and they were playing like Ange or, Brighton in certain seasons. They quite literally won the league with a very attractive, attack-minded style, and they're adding Wirtz to it. And they're probably going to add a striker. City are missed out on Wirtz, and in a week figured out that they could go out and get Shirky, and he's damn near finished, so they're bringing in tens, they're bringing in attack-minded players, and the only signing outside of Zubamendi that Arsenal were ready to make in this summer window so far is a 50 million pound defender that doesn't start for us. Now, the order in which we do things doesn't necessarily mean that that's the priority. But when you're willing to spend 50 million on a center back, I like Dean Huijsen. I think he's great. But you're willing to do that, a release clause as well. And he doesn't even start for us, but you don't have any of those difference makers X factor. I'm looking at you sideways, especially because we don't have unlimited funds. So I think like Arsenal really need to make sure that they have their eyes open and they're not doubling down on things that already kind of don't work. I feel like football is quite simple and we've made it very difficult by wanting our striker not to strike and our left back to be our creative midfielder and, center backs at fullback. And, it's just, we've done a lot of things that are making things more difficult, having two number one goalkeepers, when really I think football is quite simple and you just need to, it's entertainment. You want to play good, fun, attack-minded football. You want to be able to be aggressive and step onto your opposition, score lots of goals. And we're kind of doing a lot to like make things more difficult. And I just feel like we need to simplify things. Brian, thank you so much for your super chat. Brian says Arteta is not going to get better until there are consequences for falling short. He overrates his ability to makes excuses when he falls short. I do think that, he operates and the club operate under some sort of like, it's fine. We're fine. I don't know why everybody is panicking. We've done what we needed to do. Like, it does sometimes feel like they think the job is going exactly how it should and it's fine. Why is everybody panicking? There's nobody else in this window that should be acting more aggressively than Arsenal, yet and still almost every single other Premier League side in the top 6 is already very close to signing players. And I know that we've signed Zubamendi, but he's been basically signed since January and he still hasn't done his medical. So Liverpool and City kind of out of the gate being more aggressive than Arsenal, bringing in attack-minded players, but nobody needs attackers more than us. It puts a sour taste in my mouth. I'm not going to lie. I know the window just opened, but it doesn't matter. Other teams are already doing stuff, and it doesn't feel like people are doubling down on this defensive style, but I feel like we're going to, and I don't want us to. Nabi says, Sesko, Gyökeres, it's not matter. Arsenal score bangers from all over the gaff. Yo-Yo says, Arteta built this team in his image. We play the way Arteta wants us to. Ask yourself why Dembele starts for Arsenal in the false 9. Would Vitinha play the 6? Would Donnarumma, Hakimi, Mendes wide? Nope. Ewan says, people forget Inter versus Barca semi was high scoring. Barca just couldn't defend. Not surprised at the score in the final. Marco says, I realized last night that Arteta wasn't joking when he said we were short last season in terms of numbers. We only had 24 players when we were allowed 25. I mean, the being short and all that kind of stuff, I totally understand. It is what it is. But, for me, it's more of like yes, we need numbers, but we need profiles. Like there's profiles that are missing. There's X factor and goal scoring and creativity. There's a lot of things missing. And so the numbers are what they are. But, I'm concerned that, two of our major signings are going to be a backup goalkeeper and probably a defender that doesn't even start for us. So they're talking about Arsenal want to bring in 4 major signings, and if 2 of those are not even attackers, then what kind of summer are we actually looking at? Blessing says 20 minutes late, but I'm here. Thank you so much for coming in. John says Krava was a beast in the final. He has Martinelli work rate plus his own Messi-like dribbling, and PSG got a lot of plaudits for coming back and defending and stuff. And then obviously then people are using that as like, but it's only a problem when Arteta does it. I'm pretty sure if you look at defensive metrics, you will not see the likes of Kvaratskhelia and Desiree Doué and Dembele with defensive actions that mimic a fullback. I think people, again, they're very dishonest, and I think that people that don't want us to defend as much or to be so obsessed with, defensive, our attackers almost looking like wingbacks and stuff. I feel like it's just a matter of wanting them to have a little bit more freedom. That doesn't mean that they don't defend at all, but it's always so extreme. They do defend too much. Their defensive metrics look like fullbacks. Their defensive metrics are down by fullbacks. And you still don't see the Dembeles and the Kvaratskhelias in that. So there is a world where you are contributing defensively, but you're not playing like a fullback, Nabi says, I can't help thinking Mikel Arteta is banking money now. Johnny says, hello, Jess. You look 25. Hope in Arsenal has returned seemingly. I mean, I am like 25. What do you mean I look at? You guys know I'm 25. Come on now. Billy says, I got a question. If Sesko and Rodrigo signed for us alongside Zubamendi, backup goalkeeper, backup 10 winger, is that good enough to win the Premier League or Champions League? I mean, sure. Like, I feel like, yeah. I mean, Rodrigo to me is a difference maker. Zubamendi makes a difference. Backup number 10, depending on who it is a difference maker. I think so. It still depends on who the players are, and I still feel like Arteta needs to take some responsibility for the way that he platforms some of his players and the style that we play doesn't necessarily make us, we're the type of side that doesn't dominate the the mid-table teams anymore. We're not the type of team that steps on other teams anymore. We're quite defensive and risk adverse and a little scared. And I feel like that's more mimicking the manager than not having certain people in the team. He's the type of, to me, the manager, he can strip any player of their flair and confidence if he really wants to. So it's up to him to platform these players correctly, because even if you get Sesko and Rodrigo, who's to say that he's not going to say, okay, well, Rodrigo, I need you hugging the touchline and I need you isolated with nobody around you that's going to connect with you. And I want you to just make it happen from that wing position and it should just be fine. I really do think that he needs to take responsibility too, which I don't think he does. Charles says, I think people who stop hating on Sesko because they prefer Gyökeres. Nabi says, I have no problem with Benjamin at Arsenal, 2 better than 1. Okay. John says, another thing I hate about Arteta is that he likes to sign finished attackers. MM says, with Tim Lewis, we will never have urgency in the market. And I have noticed that since he's come in, Tim Lewis in particular, and I have to go back and see when we actually brought him in. Actually, let me see. Tim Lewis, Arsenal hired. Tim Lewis was hired in October of 2022. So kind of after, basically he was hired after the summer window. Oh no, Tim Lewis appointed, hold on. I think he was hired in 2020 actually. So he's hired before that. It's just, he he's the person I think that's the link between the Cronkies and everybody else, right? And there just feels like there's always like kind of like I won't say friction, but there's always kind of like a stop. It's like we know we're interested in a player, we start the talks, and then it should be going, and then it just kind of stops. And I don't know if that's him kind of looking at the money and having to comb through it and comb through it and comb through it. I really don't know what it is, but some combination of Richard Garlick and Tim Lewis, I do feel like is very obsessed with the money aspect of things and keeping the Cronkies money where it's supposed to be. And we can't get things done quickly. Like, again, Man City were in for Wirtz about 2 weeks ago, maybe 2-ish weeks ago. Liverpool jumped in. Man City were not in the picture anymore, and they're already putting in bids for Shirky. And we still haven't decided on a striker, and we've needed one for 2 seasons. And for some reason, they just can't seem to just pick somebody and put a bid in. I have a feeling that that's Tim Lewis. Tim Lewis, Richard Garlick, I feel like they make things go a lot slower. And we need to get players in early, earlier than anything. Billy says, I think what changed Arteta to become more pragmatic was the 22-23 season when we ran out of gas. By the end of the season, we were electric at the start, attacking fluid football. So yeah, Errol says, evening, Jess. Ben Jacobs has confirmed it's Sesko who Arsenal are buying. The legwork has been done from last season. I think he's guessing, Errol, if I'm honest. Like, Sammy McBell said they're still looking at both, so I don't know if it's, I know that Fabrizio put that first thing out like a couple days ago, and now we haven't heard anything else. And now Sammy McBell today is saying that Arsenal are looking at both and, kind of deciding between both. So I don't really know. But yeah, Samuel says, this is actually getting me angry, to be honest. We played without a striker since Abba, and they haven't decided who they want to sign. I don't know. But if you've done a lot of the legwork and groundwork since last summer, I really don't expect the signing to take a long time. If you've chosen Sesko, we're kind of like the only team where it really does take like a million business days to get one thing over the line. And we're very much so like a one player at a time type of club. There's no consent. Like we don't know what's going on with Thomas Partey. We don't know what's going on with Trossard. We still haven't really decided on the striker. Zubimendi hasn't done his medical. Like, it's just a lot of open-ended shit, Johnny says, why were we electric? Jesus was up top. Why aren't we in the last 2 years? Havertz up top, rest my case. Space says, we have decided they want Sesko. They have decided they want Sesko. Wasn't that the case since last season? It was Isak and then Sesko. Well, that's not really what Sammy McBell is saying. Sammy McBell said something different today that is still like open-ended. So I don't know really what's going on, but everything about like kind of how things have been talked about over the last couple of days has been a little weird. It's like Zubimendi, Samuel McBell says Zubimendi could go do his medical and everything is done. And then the president of Sociedad comes out a couple of days later and says he still has options and it'll take a long time for it to get done. And now we haven't heard anything else. So yeah, it's just the weirdest thing. It's just the weirdest thing. I don't know. Yeah, I don't really know what the tea is on that. Let's see. I'm just looking it up real quick. Yeah, Sammy McBell said Sesko has near universal backing at the Emirates, but he will be the more expensive deal. Gyökeres is more economical, but would see the club divert from their long-term strategy, given Sesko has always been a target. Both deals have been explored. So he didn't give any endpoint to, what we're doing. So Imran says Arsenal should have picked up domestic cups in Europa. This would have given greater confidence when attacking Premier League and Champions League. Now anxiety and uncertainty across the fan base. Shamaria says, I just want clarity. And to me, like, I do want clarity. I know that somebody is probably screaming, well, the club don't owe you anything. And I'm like, I get that. But ultimately, we still feel like the type of club that has a lot of like gray area and a lack of like just clear objectives in the transfer window. We don't really know what's going on. Like it's very, I don't know, maybe it's like that on purpose, but I just think like a lot of fans would love to just know and hear the club say, we're 100% going to get a striker. We're going for the left wing. We're going to get some creativity in this team. We're going to do this. But all they do is say, I'm excited and I have goosebumps. And then nothing happens. So I don't know. Um, Burmy says, why does AFC take so long to get deals over the line? It's so frustrating. Hopefully, Hand of Arsenal can give us an update soon. He's the only in the know that actually would know what's going on. Josh says, why can't we just buy the striker and move on? Eventually, everyone will go from hopeful and excited for the striker, just get it over with vibes. And I know that's not really what transfers are about. I get it. Like transfers aren't really done so that the fans will be happy about the speed at which we do them, but we do drag like signings for so long that it is incredible. It's so difficult to get excited about them at the end of the day because it's like, but you took like 2 months to get it done. It's like Zubamendi, I know that he's gonna do wonders for us and stuff, but it's like you've announced that we've signed him about 5 times now. Like, why is he not in the shirt? It's crazy. But I get it. The window is just barely opened. I'm just hoping that mostly beyond anything, beyond the speed at which we do things, is that they do want to bring in players that are going to have the X factor, that are going to make us more creative, that are the types of players that are going to put us in the same kind of category as Man City and Liverpool. I think with the players that we're looking at, from what we've seen, don't really put us in that same level. It's going to put us one level below. And I really do feel like we need to make sure that we bring in that attacking midfielder. I really don't think we can go the window without it, because you already know that that's going to end up being the reason why we don't do what we need to do, is because we just still lack creativity, or, we couldn't, when we needed a goal, we couldn't, pass through the lines against the deep block. Like, I don't really see the signings that we have right now solving a lot of those problems, or that we look like we're going to get. Yo-Yo says Arsenal do like a transfer saga, but I care little about the noise. Treetop says the thing is that we always want to be like Man City. We should stop copying Man City. I don't even think it's about copying Man City per se, Treetop. I do think that you do want to look at their team and say, does our team match up to their team in terms of can go toe to toe with them? I think that's not necessarily trying to copy, but it's trying to make sure you're on the same level, right? Liverpool and City were on pretty much the same level for about 4 years, but they were completely different. I don't think there's anything wrong with comparing in that way. But at the same time, it's not just City that are potentially moving away from this really slow, pass, juga de position. It's like almost every big team except like is moving away from whatever that was. They're not doing inverted center backs at full back. They're not doing this stiffy style. They are playing fun, attacking football. And if there's anybody that should be playing that style, it's Arsenal, because we're known for it. But somehow we become synonymous with corners and throw-ins. And to me, that's not really who we should be. So yeah, but I know some people are like, it doesn't matter how we play because it's just about winning. But we're not even winning. So yeah. Charles says, I don't trust that Zubamendi bro can change his mind with a pen in his hand. Samuel says, every big club in Europe is packing and getting ready for Club World Cup. Arsenal must move fast if they want the players that they want. Marco says it's very likely we go big this summer. I think we not only getting Sesko or Jokeris, but a big name left wing and a big name attacking mid. We have to, though. It's not even about like I hope we do it or I think we will. Like, it should be a certainty. The club should feel confident coming out and saying we're going to get those players, and they haven't really said that. Ornstein has already kind of thrown a little bit of ice on the left wing that maybe somebody needs to go in order for somebody to come in. That shouldn't be the case. It should be no matter what happens, no matter if we get rid of Trossard and Martinelli, a left winger is coming in. But it's still kind of wishy-washy on that. There's been no word at all on an attacking midfielder, because the word on the street is if Thomas Partey stays, they're not even going to look for another midfielder at all. So we shouldn't even be having conversations about what we think is going to happen or, what we hope is happening. This should be a certainty. We should know we're getting these players. City fans and Liverpool fans are not sitting there wondering whether they're going to get the types of players that they need. They know they're going to get them. Nyasha says, I know it's hindsight, but if we had spent the Kai money on Sesko 2 years, we wouldn't be in a position where we have Havertz, who's our highest earner, playing in a position we didn't sign him for. I mean, there's plenty of different ways we could have went in with when we bought Havertz. Like, I really don't want to beat the dead horse, because it's dead now. He's our highest earner and he plays for Arsenal Football Club, and it is what it is. But there's plenty of different directions that we could have went in. Blessing says Arteta had a great system in 22-23, but lacked the personnel to go all the way. In 23-24, we had the perfect system, but our form in the first half of the season cost us. And so how we got to where we got to this season, which I understand we had injuries and the red cards and all that, but that still doesn't explain to me how we couldn't beat Everton at home, why we passed. Like, it was just almost every single game was excruciating to watch, except for like 2 or 3 games, maybe 4, where we actually played good football. It was just, that cannot just be, oh, we were missing whoever the fuck. Like, it just can't be. I'm sorry. I called out the deviation from 22-23 immediately. That Arteta side was a much closer relative to the dominant PSG side than the current Arsenal team. 100. Well, I think it's just the lack of technical quality. I think the players that we brought in, whether you like them or not, do not have the same technical level as Zinchenko and Jesus. So you brought in Jesus and Zinchenko. It wasn't even just that, by the way. Essentially, we replaced Ben White, moved out of center back, and we brought in Saliba. And then Ben White moved to right back. So that was almost like having 2 new signings. You had basically a new center back and a new right back. Ben White and Saliba are both really good technical defenders, right? They can pass the ball. Like, Saliba's really good at carrying the ball. Ben White has a good passing range. So that changed things. And then you brought in Zinchenko, who basically was like a midfielder for us. And then you had Gabriel Jesus. The technical level from the 2021-22 season to the next season, where we first challenged, was like we times it by 10. Like, it just went up so much. And then you had like a fresh Odegaard who, in that season was like lights out, fresh Saka, lights out. There's just a difference. And then you also had Xhaka. Then when you go from that to, it's just, you don't have Zinchenko in the team. You don't have Jesus in the team. So you've replaced like Kai Havertz and Rice coming in for Xhaka and Jesus, and then Zinchenko's not there. It's just a lot of change that the technical level dropped. And one thing is, I don't think that PSG are like super lightweight or anything. I do think that they have some small midfielders, but they can move, they can tackle, they can do all those things, but the technical level is high. And I think that's one thing that we need to lift again. Is this was fine for like a couple minutes, but big shin kicker type of team all around is just, 1, it's not the Arsenal way, and 2, it's not enough to break down the deep blocks. So we 100% need to bring in more technical quality. Josh says, I keep saying that, in my opinion, a striker doesn't solve much. A striker needs service, and our chance creation is so poor. We need a high volume of technical, skillful dribblers, players flooded into the squad. Regarding our attacking approach, I think in general, the football needs to be effective, efficient, and intentional. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be Harlem Globetrotters. We rarely do it, though. Well, I can say 100% that the way that we played this past season was not effective, because you had the ball almost all the time sitting at the halfway line, going up against mid and deep blocks that you couldn't break down because you didn't have the technical quality, the passing range, the dribblers, any of that to break those down. And so we really are a team that should probably give the other team the ball and nick it off of them and just play on the counterattack. But Arteta has it like where he wants to have the ball all the time, but he doesn't have the types of players that can utilize that ball the way that we need it to so that we can score a lot and create chances. And so it's just backwards and strange. Like, we came up against deep blocks in the 2022-2023 season, by the way. And there was never a time that we didn't put them under pressure, that we didn't win the ball back and recycle and go at them and take millions of shots and eventually force the goal. We did that plenty of times in that season. But people are basically, I don't want to say that they're lying, but I do think that the narrative is that in the 2022-2023 season that nobody knew who we were, and so they didn't plan for us, and then the next season they planned for us, so then all these deep blocks just arrived. We played against deep blocks in that first season. We just could break them down. you know Yo-Yo says, oh yeah, I read that one, sorry. Treetop says, do you think Arsenal will win next season? No. C says, true, PSG bought Kvaratskhelia for 70 million euros in the winter window. Blessing says that's not true. I don't know what you mean, but we did play against deep blocks in the 2022-2023 season. Look at where Everton played against us at home and away. We broke down both of those blocks. Actually, no, we didn't break down the one away, but the way at home, we played against Everton at home and beat them 4-0. We beat their ass at home. Yes, we were open at the back at times, and we got a little lucky, and I think Ramsdale made a save, but we broke down that deep block. When we played against Bournemouth at home and we had like the wonder goal from Reece Nelson, they were in a deep block. When we had to get a goal against Manchester United, they were locked into our box and couldn't get out. And we forced them to give us the ball back every single time, and we forced the ball into the back of the net. We quite literally played against deep blocks. I don't know why people are pretending like we didn't. Aha says, you hinted at it there, Jess. In my opinion, the best way to solve our mid-low block struggles is to get at teams when they aren't in that shape, would mean sacrificing possession and showing intent on turnovers. Yep. Billy says, by the way, Martinelli and Saka would love Sesko. The Sesko guy can fly. We were 2-0 down and they couldn't get out of their half. We were playing in their half. Yo-Yo says, deep blocks isn't a new thing in football. Teams have been defending like soldiers for ages. Parking the double bus was coined in the 2000s. The Italians were famous for defensive football for decades, and acting like we've never come up against deep blocks before and they just magically showed up is just dumb. It's just, we had the technical players there, and we actually had a really good, I feel like, going into where do we go from here, I think moving it forward from just like what was happening back then, what needs to happen from here is we need to find the balance again. I think that we went too far into the physical, not wanting to get dominated, getting corners and throw-ins and being like that. We went way too far into that realm. And in 2022, 2023, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I don't know if Arteta felt like we were getting physically dominated, but there was never a time where I felt like physically we were dominated in that season. I just felt like there were times where we just got a little nervous at the back, and maybe we were a little open and we got punished. And I just think that we got nervous at the end of that season, because we didn't get physically dominated against West Ham when we dropped points away from home to them. We weren't being physically dominated against Liverpool when we dropped points to them. That was more of like a mental blip than not being physically able to be a part of that match. Like, we had Saliba and Gabriel, we had Ben White, we had Tomiyasu. Those players were really physical. Xhaka's no slouch. Partey's no slouch. Martinelli is not weak, and neither is Saka. So I'm not quite sure why we needed to go to such an extreme, but he just needs to add more of that technical quality back into the team and trust that the defense that he's built is good enough to withstand having more players thrown forward and maybe having not so big, strong, burly men in front of them protecting. It would help us so much if we had at least one player that we can stick into that left center mid role that would allow more creativity on that side. And also you could play double tens or a more attack-minded midfield. But the Arteta right now thinks that Declan Rice and Kai Havertz and Marino are attacking midfielders for Arsenal. And if that's how he feels, we'll never get out of the hood. We're not getting out of the hood, man. Blessing says, I'm not sure if anyone remembers, but one of our best performances of the season came in the 3-0 win versus Forest at home. That midfield we played that day was Marino, Partey, and Odegaard. I do remember that. Everybody said that. Wait, no, it wasn't. It wasn't Blessing. It wasn't Marino, Partey, and Odegaard. I swear it was Jorginho. Hold on, let me check. Arsenal 3. I could be wrong, but I feel like Jorginho played that game because I think right before the game, people were panicking. Maybe it wasn't. No, it was. I'm right. It was. I'm right. When we played against when we played against Nottingham Forest at home, and you're absolutely correct, Blessing. That was one of our best matches in terms of being able to break those teams down or break that team down, and we just scored the goals really easily in that game. The midfield was Odegaard, Jorginho, and Marino. And I remember because before the game, the timeline was on fire because the whole thing was that it was the midfield was going to get dominated. Jorginho is terrible, blah, blah, blah. And that ended up being one of our most dominant and complete performances. The attackers were actually Saka, Jesus, and Trossard. The goal scorers were Ethan, Partey, and Bukayo Saka because I think Jorginho got a yellow, and so they brought in Partey after halftime. But that was one of our most complete, dominating performances that we really don't talk about. It was kind of around the Sporting performance as well. I think we either played them before or right after Sporting, but our midfield was quite literally Odegaard, Jorginho, and Marino, and the front line had Jesus in it. And I remember the conversations were how Jesus changes things. And yes, it wasn't perfect, but it just gave us more technical quality. You just need to add that back in. Maybe Zubamendi helps that for sure. I think Zubamendi definitely adds more technical quality in our midfield for sure. Ahmed says, I remember after that game, people saying we play way more fluid without Havertz and Rice. Billy says, our best game was City, in my opinion. We completely battered them. Treetop says, would El Canus be perfect for Arsenal? I think so. Josh says, I wonder what Wenger thinks about our style of play. If we were a rival team and he was the manager, I bet he would complain about us. Blessing says that front line was Trossard, Jesus, and Saka. Yep. Yanni says, everyone remembers that bar Arteta outs. And Blessing says it was Jorginho, Marino, and Odegaard. Yeah, it's just different. And I don't think that, that doesn't mean that Rice shouldn't play games because we played really good games with him, but the balance needs to be right. And right now it's way too defensive. It's way too stiff. And up front, we also lack creativity, and neither Havertz or Martinelli give you that. So moving forward, the winger, like I keep saying, has to be a creator. It needs to be somebody that can, come central and pick a pass out, somebody that can beat his man 1v1, somebody that's a really good 1v1 dribbler, or at least somebody that, has that X factor and that eye for goal. You need that, because right now having it being Martinelli and Havertz, and then you have Declan Rice as an attacking midfielder, our fullbacks don't add anything. They don't add any creativity to the team necessarily. It's just a little bit too defensive, so yeah. Aha says, hey Jess, from who played the better football standpoint, not overall, who were better, 2007-8 Arsenal or 2022-2023 Arsenal? 2008, 2007, 2008 to me. I just think that team is incredibly underrated because they didn't win anything, but whew, you want to see, like, because to me, no, like, this is gonna sound really shady, but our arson like arson ball, whatever you want to call it, Wenger ball, is still way better than Mikel Arteta ball. Like, both can be quite fluid and both can be very entertaining, but when Wenger ball is going, it's just a different gravy. And so I do think 2007, 2008, that being said, like 22, 23 was really, really good and probably the best football that we had played in a very long time, so recency bias, Billy says 2007, 2008 got more ballers, but 22, 23 were better tactically. Spacetime says the issue I have is why didn't we evolve last summer? Some of the signings the club will make this summer should have been done last summer. And so I don't know. I don't think Arteta and the club feel like they need to evolve. I think they feel like we're fine, So yeah. But in terms of signings and things like that, and there's not a lot to really update you guys on because nothing is happening, So outside of the fact that we have dropped out of the Juan Garcia race, that came out like I think early this morning that Arsenal are no longer in the race for Juan Garcia. I don't know if it's just he rejected us and just decided to go to Barcelona, but the reasoning is that Arsenal realized that they didn't want to spend 20 something million on a goalkeeper if they already had Raya. The reality is that was our reality last summer. We got rejected. It's fine to say that we just, he decided he wanted to go to Barcelona and said he didn't want to come to us. It's fine. Who cares? I wouldn't want to be a backup either, So yeah, I think we're not getting Juan Garcia. We'll still get a backup goalkeeper, but I would love for Arsenal to just be serious for 1 minute in your life and not go spend any money really on a backup goalkeeper. Go get somebody that is going to cost like barely anything. I don't care who it is, and just like move forward. Don't give fuck. We have so many bigger fish to fry. Like we have way bigger fish to fry than the backup goalkeeper. So I'm kind of happy that we are not getting him, or we're not in the race anymore. Because to me, it's just put it on the back burner, the Sesko thing, I read to you guys what Simon McBell said. I'm still thinking it's probably Sesko, but they're still kind of trying to keep the options open, or still looking, or I don't know what the fuck, So even though we're in concrete talks for Sesko, there's no bids or anything that I can really update you guys on, really. And for those of you guys who want to understand what I was trying to say when I was trying to explain to you guys why I wasn't devastated about Sesko, go watch James B and Ben Madison's video from earlier today. It's on James B's channel, the Gooniverse podcast. Ben Madison does all those great threads on, young players and doing his scouting and stuff on X, Twitter. And he's a great scouting, tactical mind or whatever, something that's not really my forte, but I like to hear other people talk about it. And James obviously really knows what he's talking about as well. They talked about why Sesko makes sense. And James's reasoning was exactly what I was saying, but I just couldn't articulate it as good as he could. It's incredibly hard to not be excited about bringing in somebody that you rate very highly, even though you have concerns around his readiness and do not want Havertz starting next season. But there are concerns around Gyökeres. And so, yeah, it's I really, really, really implore you guys to go watch it, because I think it's a really, really good video. And it's also going to be something that they do, I think they said every Monday. So tune in for that. And I talked to James earlier today, and we're going to try to get together to do a video soon as well. But yeah, I thought that was a really, really good video. In terms of left wing, Matt Law had put out an article today about Nico Williams and why nobody is going for him. Chelsea are in talks for Jamie Gittins. And so you would think that we have a free run at Nico Williams, right? Because if they go for him, then it's just kind of like Nico Williams chilling there waiting for us. But he was saying that nobody is going after Nico Williams because they want a £60 million release clause paid all the way up front. Plus his wages are just ridiculous. It's £300,000 a week. And that is just like, you cannot touch that with a 10-foot pole. Like, that is like hamstringing you for, like, as good as I think Nico Williams is, you guys know I rate him so highly, but not with those wages. No, it just can't be. And Arsenal have also known this for a while, because this was also the case last season. It's not like anything has changed. So here's my issue with Arsenal. It's either you're going to get him or you're not. Either you understand what it would take to get him and you're ready to do that, or you're not. Wasting time on Nico Williams, or for some reason not getting a left winger because you still can't get him, is unacceptable. It is unacceptable at this stage. You need to go and get a left winger. If you don't get your best person or the one you want, who cares? You didn't do that last summer, and you see what the repercussions of that were. Martinelli and Trossard, any combination of those two is not good enough. So you need to go get somebody. Unfortunately, there's just not there are a lot of options, but the options are becoming less and less the longer that you wait. Because now another player that you guys are interested in, and Jamie Gittins, is probably no longer available to you. Rodrigo is probably going to end up staying at Real Madrid. So your options end up being Leao and Nico Williams, and both of those are financially big, like very big for Arsenal. And you already know that Sesko is going to be incredibly expensive. He's going to be between 67 and 75 million pounds. And then all the add-ons and all that is going to definitely add up. And so Arsenal, you've known what Nico Williams is going to cost. You know what nothing has changed since last summer. Your aversion to Nico Williams is the same aversion that you have now. So either you want him or you don't, so either go get him or not, and we move on to something else. But it is just unacceptable not to get a winger, in my opinion. You cannot just go with Sesko and Sesko alone. You can't. And if you don't see any of the touchline wingers that you want, sell Trossard and go out and get somebody that can replace his profile. Go get a Javi Simmons, go get somebody like that. Go get a Eze. There are options. I'm not trying to hear no winger, and I'm definitely not trying to hear Leroy fucking Sané. So just go get someone. I think that I get it that you want this particular person, but we are just like City. They couldn't get worse, but they didn't just sit there and say, you know what, I'm not going to go get anybody. They switched gears and went to Shirky. That's exactly what we should do with Nico Williams if you're not prepared to spend the money, because it's the same. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. Samuel says, I think it's just his salary. Well, it hasn't changed, Samuel. It's been the same since last summer. We know that it's 300,000 pounds a week. So either you want to pay that, or that he'll negotiate or come down, but nothing has changed. Blessing says, Jess, they can't, but they will. Burmy says, we definitely need a left wing upgrade. Just sign someone with quality. Selling Trossard is the fundamental issue. What money are we getting for him? I don't know. We're still the only club that has not gotten the Saudi bag, by the way. I think we are one of the only teams that have not been blessed with the Saudi coin. So maybe talk to one of the Saudi clubs. This is why you have a top sporting director, is he's meant to have agent connections that can help facilitate exits for your players. So yeah, but they want to give him a new deal, so Saida says, can't they scout someone from South America for left wing? I'm sure there are more options than the obvious we keep being linked to. Yeah. Spacetime says Nico is having groin issues that might require surgery. I think that's why clubs are also waiting for 300,000 pounds a week. It has to be a robust player. Josh says, yes, I've always wondered why you haven't done a collab with James yet. Great news. I have done collaborations with James in the past. I think the last one that we did might have been, it was months ago, but yeah, we usually do more, but I've just, the end of the season was crazy. So yeah, we're 100% going to get together. Yeah. Anton Dunn says the Saudis hate us because we don't like their takeover of the Prem. Good point. Channel 1 says keep Trossard, sell Martinelli. Marco says Edu made a visit 2 years ago to Saudi and nothing fucking came of it. Like, where's the Saudi bag? We must. I just feel like it is a little bit of something in the back of my mind when you start talking about keeping both Martinelli and Trossard, that gives them the opportunity not to get a left wing. And so I don't know, but we shall see. There are like little light rumors about Leroy Sané that Arsenal are trying to hijack Tottenham's move for Leroy Sané. I still think that this is agent talk because he really wants to stay at Bayern, but to me, it feels similar to the stuff that came out about Party yesterday about Barcelona being interested. It's just agent talk trying to force the clubs into giving them what they want, right? And so, yeah. I don't think we're going to get Leroy Sané. If we do, Um, Josh says, I must have missed the collabs. I need to be there for the next one. I'll definitely let you guys know what we decide in terms of a day and time. Stavros said you should collaborate with Curtis Shaw. Would be an unexpected dynamic. I've tried to contact him before. He never responds. So you guys will have to convince him to do it because I'm not reaching out anymore. So yeah. But yeah, we need to get that left wing in. So yeah, like I told you guys, no Garcia. Doesn't feel like Williams either for the time being. But Arsenal still need to get those things done. And I'd love for some sort of something to come out about an attacking mid or another midfielder because I still feel like we need to add some more creativity into the team. You know, Kai Havertz and Marino and Rice are not attacking midfielders. So they're not. You can say they are, but they're not. you know. Samuel says, I think more realistic option for us is Xavi or Nico. Josh says, I need to see Curtis and Jess argue about Sesko. Johnny says, who would you prefer between Rodrigo and Nico Williams in a perfect world to choose? Also between Sane and Leao, I would choose Rodrigo or Leao. I mean, I really like Nico Williams. But I feel like if Rodrigo is available, you just have to choose him. He's not available, it seems, but yeah. Sane or Leao. I mean, Leao. So yeah, Rodrigo and Leao, you know. I think also Man City did get a new sporting director, and that sporting director is doing a really good job. I need to see something for Berta for sure, like soon, like ASAP now. The Arsenal perspective says, howdy all, hope all is well with everyone. Let's get the likes up, people. It costs nothing to smash the likes. Yeah. Anton Dunn says 80 million Barcola would show some serious intention. I don't know if he's actually truly going to be on the market because even though they brought in Kvaratskhelia and like, I think we're like, oh, well, of course he'd want to leave because they brought somebody in to start over him. But he still got a lot of playing time last season, even though he wasn't necessarily like the main starter. And he's guaranteed to win things there. You know, I feel like that comes into play. I think people are more likely to stay at teams that they don't start at if they are guaranteed something. He's guaranteed like a league title almost every year and a couple cups. And they just won the Champions League. So I don't know if I'm buying this whole idea that he's available. I think people want him to be available and are like, well, of course you'd want to leave. You're not a starter, but you know, he's a young player that I don't think is under any sort of pressure to go. You know, so unless something changes, then yeah. But he would definitely shoot right up to the top of the list if he was available. So yeah. Johnny says Barcola, Due. I just think they're two completely different players. James says Cronkies just need to sell the team. The TIFO was enough. Josh says Barcola isn't the finished article, and I worry about Mikel's ability to coach and improve attackers. I mean, I think a lot of people are worried about it. I would say, though, that I feel the same, like, is he going to be able to improve these attackers? He's known for the Sanes and the Sterlings, but he hasn't bought any attackers really. So, you know, people are like, well, Saka would have just became a top player and he was also, you know, gifted Martinelli and all this. So Jesus was pretty much all he was going to be. He was already the finished article, so there wasn't really anything to develop there. So was Trossard. He was able to improve Havertz to a certain extent. So I think the players that we've seen Arteta kind of improve have been players that like improving Nketiah, improving Havertz, you know, players like that. I don't know if he's really improved like the best players that we have, but I don't know. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I think the only way we'll know for sure what his capability is if we buy young players and he has to work with them. If you buy Sesko and Barcola, or Sesko and Nico Williams, or Sesko and Gittins, or whatever, it is going to be up to Mikel Arteta to get them to be the finished article. And so I think that's the only time that we'll actually really truly know. You know, Johnny says, Desiree Doué is class. How come nobody saw him? Like Brighton, is he from the academy? I doubt it. I'll be honest, I didn't know a lot about him, but before he went to PSG, we were linked, and I remember saying there's just no way that we should not be in for him. He's clearly talented, and we were linked, and Edu just never moved, so I don't know why we didn't go get him, but he was definitely around and people knew about him. Like, there was Doué and Barcola, and then now there's like Ben Seguir and Akliouche. Like, those are like the next ones, because Shirky is obviously making his big move this summer. So France are consistently developing these high quality attacking players, attacking left winger and attacking mids or whatever. And so we don't have to sit around on our hands and act like we can't go get these players. They're there. We just have to get them. Like, there's nothing wrong with getting players that are not the finished article. Neither one of Doué or Barcola were the finished article when they arrived at PSG. And now look, the only reason why I feel like we really want that finished article for the striker is because people really want Kai Havertz out of the team. And I'm definitely on that boat as well. But there's nothing wrong with bringing in players that aren't the finished article. Theo says Arteta is allergic to French talent since the Guendouzi debacle. Osanuga says PSG has so much pace in different positions. Why does Arteta like slow lumps? I don't know. Just Asking says, who is our striking coach? We all know our set piece coach, but who is responsible to get the best out of our forward line? We need to make sure we have the best in class. I don't know what they do. Carlos Cuesta is the psychologist or whatever. So he's the one who like talks to them about shit. I don't know who is doing the attacking stuff. Like, what is his name? Wasn't it like the tech guru or what was his name? The tech guru or something like that. Techie guy, whatever. He ain't done shit. Fire his ass. We're actually a shit football club. Hopefully somebody doesn't mess up Max, you mean? Blessing says, isn't it concerning that each season Arteta has changed the system rather than just improving the squad and starting 11? Kind of, but for people that have been talking about this for a couple years, it's kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, it is strange that he changed the system. It's strange that he doesn't you could just have like a couple little tweaks, but it almost feels like he throws the whole thing away. I don't know, but he doesn't seem like he has very much conviction in the system. He keeps changing it, and I don't know why. Ross says the puppy letting Arsenal know as well. This isn't even my dog. This is the other people's dog, and they always start barking as soon as I start doing something. And I'm just like, girl, like, can you like not bark right now? I'll never forget. Like, I waited until like 9 or 10 o'clock at night to start recording. Like, I had like 3 or 4 videos to record. And this girl started barking the minute I pressed play. The minute I pressed play at 9 o'clock at night. And I was so upset. I was just like, I mean, I can't look over and tell her to shut up, but I wanted to. And I'm like, why is she even outside at this time? Like, it was just wild. She just senses that I'm about to start recording. Conrad says, I think the club will sign a striker soon, but anything else won't happen until we move on Reece, Fabio, and Sambi. You know how they roll, Jess. I can see that for sure. Boy says, I don't agree that the system has changed. I think it has. There 100%, the system has changed from 2022, 2023 to the next season. It's just different. It's like, it's not necessarily like we haven't changed from a 4-3-3 to a 3-4-3 or anything like that, but we have changed, like, at least from a philosophy standpoint, how our attacks. It's a lot less fluid, a lot less movement, a lot more of people in their zones, and not necessarily any sort of, natural dialogue between players. It's very stiff and it's hard to watch. Like, first season, both Jesus and Martinelli were switching positions. Saka and Martinelli would switch positions. They were so much closer together. Martin Odegaard was in zone 14. Now he never enters zone 14. It's different. Like, it may not be a completely different system, but the way the system works is definitely different to me. And it's become even more rigid this past season, in my opinion. But I would love to know why you think that the system hasn't changed. Dr. Omizia says, big up, Jess. Arsenal are just so slow in the market. Like, we are slow in the games last season. It's so annoying. I am wondering if there's anything that we can do about, our athleticism, our ball carrying, things like that on the pitch, because they're just, when you watch PSG play, and we don't have to copy PSG verbatim, but the things that they have in their team just make it so difficult for even us. We're a very good defensive side, but there were times where they just opened us up. Like, they just opened us up, even away from home when we had our best. Girl, even when we played our best midfield, they were cutting us open, so the only thing that is outstanding probably is not having Gabrielle, which does make a big difference. But, even the best defenses like ours did struggle against them. They were just cutting us open. And so we need to add some of those elements into our team. That doesn't mean that we have to copy them line for line, but we definitely need some of those things. And it's definitely, we need 1v1 dribbling. We need those creativity, flair, and I just think ultimately, like, we just need to have a little bit more fun, a wee bit more fun. I think that could help. Jordan says, how old are your dogs? Beckham is a year and December, January, February, March, April, May, June. A year and 7 months, and Ben's is a year old. Anton Dunn says the transfer window is barely open, guys. Also, do you like the Mbomo links? I do, if that means that he's going to be an extra attacker. Like, when they say, oh my gosh, like, we're going to have this great window and everybody's saying Arsenal fans should be excited. I think I've literally heard probably 3 or 4 journalists say Arsenal fans should be excited because they're going to have a good window. And then also Arteta's talking about it too. An exciting window and a great window for us, in my opinion, would be you get a striker, you get a left wing, and Mbomo on top. That would show me that they're actually really serious. And Mbomo is the type of player that he's such a good replacement for Gabriel Jesus. And I know that Jesus is somebody that a lot of Arsenal fans still have a lot of love for, and I understand why, because he kind of changed our lives 2 years ago, but he needs replacing in terms of, like, his lack of fitness. It's just too much, so replacing Jesus with somebody that plays the exact same positions as him but has the goals that we desperately need, I think is a step up for us. I really think you need to replace Trossard and Jesus, those two profiles in particular. It's great to have the Trossard profile, a goal scorer, a little bit more creative, somebody that can play false nine and left center mid and left wing, but he's a little bit inconsistent and is not amazing as a starter. Somebody like a Javi Simmons would be great in that position, right? And then somebody like Mbomo replaces Jesus. That is, to me, the perfect replacement. Plays false nine, also plays right wing. Those are the two positions that Jesus can play, but he has the goals that Jesus just will never have, honestly. But if you're talking about bringing in Sesko and Mbomo, and our options are still going to be Martinelli and Trossard on the left, that just ain't good enough, because Mbomo is not going to start. And so you will have essentially not really changed anything up front. You are going into next season with Martinelli, Havertz, and Saka as your front line, and that's just not good enough. Samuel says, I really like Mbomo. I would be very happy if we signed him. Boy says, all of those fans who love Jesus are in love with the version of Jesus they saw in a video game. Anton Dunn says, we need excess to have a good window. Doing just enough will only get us fourth. And I agree, because we're one window behind. I think being one window behind, I don't know if you guys agree with this or not, but it feels like if we had gotten the things that we needed last summer, then we would be looking at attacking mids and what the other people are looking at. But because we didn't get the striker, we didn't get the left wing, and we just kind of sat on our hands last summer. Now we're having to make up that work, and so that'll still leave us short. And so, yeah, doing just enough won't help. I think they owe it to the players and the fans to go much bigger this summer, because I'm telling you right now, they're doing it all like all this, we're having a great window and you guys should be excited and I have goosebumps and shit. But I'm not getting goosebumps from Sesko and a defender and a goalkeeper and Zubamendi. That's not good enough, so more. Nyasha says, hold on. I hate when people are just stop texting me, like stop. I saw your stats saying we are the worst team in the Prem at progressing through the middle, which is so frustrating because our 2-8s are anywhere but in the middle all the time. But it's by design. We didn't have a problem accessing central spaces a couple of years ago. It's by design. Arteta doesn't like us building up through the middle because when you lose the ball central, it's much more dangerous when the opposition attacks. So it's all about keeping the other team from getting into dangerous positions, which us spending a lot of time keeping the opposition from getting into dangerous positions means that we're the best defensive team in the world. And, we're the best out of possession team in the world. But a lot of the things that we do, because they're more trying to be risk adverse and defensive and, proactive when it comes to keeping other people from scoring, actually keep us from scoring as well. It keeps us from being dangerous. We build up through the wings. That's all we do. We build up through the wings. Nobody goes central ever, and that's why the other teams just sit in the mid block and just really just squeeze us out to the wide areas, because they know all we're going to do is probably get the odd cross off, and then all they have to do is just crowd out whatever our center forward is, because we don't have very good center forwards. So it's it's all about keeping the other team from scoring. And that was one of the bigger changes that happened after the 2022-2023 season, is all of a sudden we stopped getting into central areas. And I just feel Arteta's scared to lose the ball there because he knows other teams can hurt us from that position. But sometimes you have to risk it for a biscuit. Sometimes you have to risk just a little bit more so that you can be more dangerous. You're never more vulnerable than when you're attacking, I feel, but that's just the reality. When you're attacking and you're throwing men forward and, you're doing the risky passes and stuff, yeah, you're more vulnerable, but you're more likely to score. And I think he doesn't back us as much to score, but he's more concerned about keeping the other team from scoring. And he's done a good job of that. We are the best defensive side in the league 2 years running, but when we didn't get the attack right, it was tough. It was tough. OGN says, if we build up through the wings, don't we need the best wingers in the world? Yeah, we need better wingers, especially like on the left-hand side. We get no production from the left-hand side. And this is why I'm a lot more bullish about making sure that we get the left wing than anything else, because we know that Arteta's probably not going to change the system. Bringing in Zubamendi means that you're doubling down on Odegaard and Rice being your 8s. And I know that's not what people want to hear, but it's just the truth. Arteta has picked his midfield. He wants the midfield, I think, that we had at the back end of last season, where it was like Jorginho, Rice, and Odegaard. And don't get me wrong, that midfield cooked. That midfield cooked that whole back end of the season. But our attack was a lot better. Like, in terms of the form was better. And to be honest, Trossard was playing a lot of those games and Martinelli was not. And maybe a fit Trossard was actually a better fit for that group than Martinelli, because having both Havertz and Martinelli is like, it's just death, because there's just no creativity there. But if you had Trossard, as much as people don't like him, as much as people disdain Trossard, he is more creative and more likely to, break somebody off and hit it in top bins, or, be able to come central and pick out a pass than Martinelli is. And so thinking about the midfield and the way that it's most likely going to be set up next season, that left wing is so fucking important. It cannot be not like it cannot be go untouched. And so they need to be a creative player. I don't know what to tell 1v1 creative player that can score goals. That is it's a tough assignment, especially when, you know, one of the options wants sick wages and then like the other one is an untouchable at AC Milan and but you got to get done. You just got to get it done. Blessing says Jorginho compensated for not having a technical eight in Rice 100%. Like I don't think, and I've said this like a million times, I don't think Rice and Partey actually work together outside of them just being better players. You know, I don't think Jorginho is necessarily better than Partey, but do I think Rice and Jorginho go better together? Yes. I think it's more like Partey and Xhaka were like peanut butter and jelly type of shit, and Jorginho and Rice were kind of like peanut butter and jelly. Like they worked together. Where when I watch Partey and Rice, I'm like, do they even pass to each other? They don't really pass to each other. That like I know that they scored a goal together, that like against like Bournemouth or Brentford or whatever. But you guys get what I'm saying. I think the balance is off. The closest balance we could probably get to a good midfield for Arsenal is probably adding Zubimendi if you're going to keep Rice and Odegaard. But if it were up to me, I would just throw that whole thing away, stick Rice in the six, and just bring in a more attack-minded midfielder or something like that and just call it a day, you know? Marco says Mikel was forced to have a semi-double pivot when he plays Rice and Jorginho, which is that's what I want with Zuby, which suits Rice a lot better. I think a 4-2, some sort of like almost like a 4-2-3-1 would do us nicely. Rice, when he plays with Partey, for some reason, Arteta doesn't feel like Partey needs help defensively. And so Rice is so far forward that when we lose the ball, they can easily bypass Rice. And then Thomas Partey is like on an island by himself. Whereas when Jorginho and Rice played together, they played very close together. And then Odegaard was getting more central, and it was more like a 4-2-3-1. So, and it still allowed Rice also. I think Rice is much better for us when he progresses the ball from deep, but he's not the type of player that's going to give us good payoff progressing the ball into the box, because when the space gets condensed, then he's just not the type of player that operates in those small spaces. So a 4-2-3-1 would do us real nicely. I would love to do a 4-2-3-1 if this is the direction that we're going in. And then make sure your left winger can lift his head up and pick a pass out. You know, just let's start there. Let's start there. Brap says, I don't understand why people hate on Trossard. He wasn't supposed to do that much anyway. His technical ability off the bench is needed though. You guys know I love Trossard. He has a chip on his shoulder and he's a little inconsistent and he can be frustrating, but he is a really good squad player. He has qualities that if you could put them in a player that is a starting level player for Arsenal would be really useful. He doesn't have the speed, but he just gives us more, I feel like at times. But Martinelli, he does the working all hard and he has the speed, so it is what it is. But the hate on Trossard to me is like fucking forced. I get that not wanting him to stay because you feel like maybe he's losing his legs and it'd be a good time to move him on, which I don't necessarily super disagree with. But I think this whole idea that he's just been like this bum that's holding us back is like, I watched all of our goals from this season. You know how the Premier League does like a little like all goals scored for Arsenal. Trossard was involved with a lot of those fucking goals, a lot of them. He was either scoring them or assisting them. He had another sick season this season, and he just gets shitted on so much, and I just don't really understand why that is, because really the only reason why we see him start so much is because Martinelli is not consistent. Trossard has 8 goals and 7 assists this season in the Premier League, and he has 2 goals and 2 assists in the Champions League. That's really good for somebody that's like a bench player. Like in comparison, last season, he had 12 goals and 1 assist, but he had 4 goals in the Champions League. So I think it kind of evens itself out. That's like 5 and 13, 18, and that's 15. He has more this season than he had last season, GA wise. So yeah, I don't know why he gets so much hate, man. Josh says Trossard is so clutch. Laundry says, I think you're a tad harsh on Martinelli. I can be, and I accept that. Martinelli is not my favorite. He's very frustrating to me, so I understand. But you're the only one talking about his football IQ lacking. I remember him doing the same trick for 1 year, whether it worked out or not. He's a brute force kind. Yeah, he's definitely somebody that he has he has something that if you can platform it properly and make sure that you can replicate those scenarios where you can utilize that specific skill a lot more, then he is very dangerous and very much so somebody that can get you a lot of goals, which is exactly what happened in the 2022-2023 season. I don't necessarily feel like that was a fluke, like he just became the worst player like after that. I think the change that we saw from one season to the next meant that the scenarios that he was in that season were less. And so the things that make him special were no longer highlighted, but the things that make him frustrating were more highlighted than ever. And Arteta, listen, it's not like he hasn't tried to replace Martinelli several times. He was really like in a January transfer window pushing for Mudryk. If Chelsea hadn't come in, Mudryk would be an Arsenal player today. And if you guys think that we were going to spend 80 something million on this kid and he wasn't going to be a starter, then I have, he also wanted Rafinha, and we know Rafinha can play on both sides. So I think Arteta recognizes his limitations, but because maybe he can't get the player that he wants or the qualities, then he's like, I'll just go with Martinelli. But it's made it so that he's so frustrating, and I hate to say that, but he just is. The Arsenal perspective says, do you think Mikel will learn from all these errors of the last 3 seasons and implement all that works is right in front of us? I don't know. Because I don't know. I really don't with Mikel. I'm very surprised that he's gone down this route because this is not who he said he wanted to be when he first signed for Arsenal. When he first signed for Arsenal, he said he wanted to play good attacking football. He wanted to score lots of goals, be aggressive, be in the other person's half all the time. I never really would have thought of him as somebody that would be almost like afraid to attack or, wouldn't implement a style that backed us to be the more aggressive and instead of, being afraid of what the other team is going to do to us. He's changed into somebody that I don't recognize, and that's unfortunate. So, yeah, I don't know what he's going to do next season, but I'm hoping that at least getting new players in, hopefully, will at least give him make him feel like he can attack a little bit more. I don't know what's going to take. I don't know what it's going to take. John says he's so frustrating. Samuel says Mudryk, what a save, by the way. Angelo says Martinelli is more of an inside forward than a winger anyway. He needs balls to run onto, and that's been lacking since Xhaka left. Marco says, I love Nelly. The bar to replace him is high, though, and I'm okay if he gets competition. Elizabeth says, I want Arteta to copy Enrique now. I mean, I want him to do his own thing, but, also recognize that football is changing and, you may want to do something specific, but you also, I don't want to say you have to go with the times, but it does feel like football is moving away from this style of football and going kind of back to the regular principles of flying fullbacks and technical quality and individualism and X factor and number 10s and regular number 9s. It looks like it's going back to that, so you can still want to do this, but there was even a time with Arsene where I was like, okay, the style that you're playing doesn't work, so you need to evolve. And I feel like even Arsene struggled to evolve. So, Mikel might struggle to latch onto those ideas and make it his own because he's still trying to perfect something that he's been trying to perfect for like 2 years now. And so I don't know if I see him looking at that Champions League final and saying, okay, let's go do what Enrique is doing. I just feel like he's going to keep on with the keeping on, Blessings says just put 2025 and 2026 in the bag. To answer my own question, unless he eats some humble pie, I don't see Arteta changing for the better. Hope I'm wrong. Kimberly says Arteta will only realize his mistakes when he loses his job. And I kind of agree with that as well. I think most managers do end up changing. If they're really stubborn, they end up changing once they go to a new club. And so it may just be the case that Arteta really does reflect on the things that he's doing after he leaves Arsenal. So yeah, Mohammed says if Rafinha can play on the left, why can't Mbomo do that? I just haven't seen it, so I don't know, but Mbomo, Arteta likes right-footed players on the left. And he's usually very strict about wanting certain things, so I don't really know why can't Mbomo do it. Um, I would with the options that are available to us at left wing, I'd prefer us just to get somebody that plays that position than try to make him into something he's not, because that's also something that I don't really love about Mikel. He bought Declan Rice to play the 6 and then doesn't play him there. He wants to make him into Steven Gerrard. Kai Havertz, he bought him to become whatever the fuck, and he ain't that. Um, Buying center backs to make them full backs, just buy the left wing, man. Just buy the left wing. Barkala Blessing says, "Do you want Arteta? Do you still want Arteta in the job?" Whether I want him in the job or not is kind of irrelevant. I think I've pretty much made. I'm not a big Arteta in, Arteta out person. I feel like it's just, to me, I feel like it creates a divide, and it's just not how I operate. I feel like I would not be upset if he left. That's kind of where I'm at with Mikel at this particular moment. Um, this last season, I was very disappointed in how it ended, and I was a little bit like, okay, this is kind of the it for me. He didn't win anything. He should have won something by now. Um, and the whole tinkering at the beginning of the season is the main reason why we didn't win anything. Plus, we went outside in the Champions League and we didn't win any domestic cups. And so I even went into this season feeling a little negatively about Arteta anyway, and this just kind of stamped it a little bit more for me. Now, the biggest difference I feel like between the way I think about things and the way Arteta out people think about things is I still want him to be the guy because I prefer him to be. I think we've invested a lot of time, effort, energy into Mikel. And if he turned around next season and proved me wrong and won things, I would be happy. Where I feel like Arteta out people align themselves with an idea that they prefer to be right than what's best for the club, which is Arteta being the guy. Now, if he's not the guy, then he needs to go, and I feel like that's pretty simple concept. You know, I I'm less confident that he's the guy on June 2nd, 2025 than I was at the final day of the season when we first challenged. And that was probably the most positive I felt about the team, which is why when people are like, "Oh, well, you were so positive. What happened to you?" It's losing a lot, meaning not winning anything, will do that to you. In 2022, 2023, at that point, I truly believe that if we just got the players that we needed, we could go again and win. And the beginning of the next season really stuck with me because I'm like, you didn't have to start off the seat like you did so much untangling of what like unraveling of the things that worked. That we spent the whole beginning of last season trying to employ, like Arteta genuinely wanted to play Thomas Partey at right back and play a diamond to force Kai Havertz on us. And I think even the Kai Havertz signing really kind of made me think twice about whether or not Mikel is the guy, because nobody on this planet, after barely missing out on winning a title, would go out and spend 65 million on Kai Havertz. That was a huge red flag to me. So since then, my feeling on him has been like a little bit like, okay, he's probably not the guy, but he is going to be here. So I'm trying to think of the ways that could make him the guy because he's here, So yeah, it's tough. I just don't want us to have wasted all this time, you know? So, yeah. But yeah, when he bought Kai, I think that that put a big red flag in my head about him because there's no way to manipulate it into a positive or something that we should have done. You're at the height of where you could be. All of your rivals are well below you. You know, the Man Uniteds, the Chelseas, everybody is in flux, and it's kind of just us in City. And Liverpool is also lower because I think they had finished outside of the top four or maybe just about top four. And so all you had to do was get a top quality player to add on top of the group that you had, and you did something completely different. And it just has stuck with me ever since. And I've had real questions about him since then. Um, yeah, I hope that answers your question, but it's just a tough one because I like Mikel. Is he Poch or what? You know, because right now it feels like he feels more like a Poch than the guy, at this point, but it is what it is. 88 miles per hour says just the stats show the wins are roughly equal for Trossard and Havertz as starters. None of them are true strikers. It's impacting on the results. Johnny says Liverpool finished fifth 3 years ago, and they played in the Europa League 2 seasons ago. So yeah, when we finished second for the first time, Liverpool were in flux. Man United finished third, but nobody was really taking them serious. Chelsea were in flux as well. Um, and so it was kind of just us in City. So if we wanted to go out there and convince any of the top players, Kudus, Xavi Simmons, whoever, to join us, we could have, and we didn't. And we did something so strange that it could only, to me, feel like Mikel wanted to have some sort of vanity signing where he could go and say that he rehabilitated the unfixable and Kai Havertz and hang his hat on that. And everything that he's done with Kai since then has made me feel that way even more. So and that just ain't it. Boy says Poch would have won at Spurs if they kept him, though. Blaze says, hi, Jess, everyone in chat. Amir says, our problem is a small squad, super unlucky injury crisis, PGMOL agenda, and lack of spine in the board. Arteta begged for a striker in the winter. Let's not act like he did not ask for one. It doesn't matter, Amir, to be honest. I mean, that's just what happened in January. If you think his hands were tied behind his back last summer, fair enough. But it never really answered the question on why he decided to buy somebody like Havertz to replace Xhaka. And that particular signing in itself, it's like he could have gotten whatever he wanted in that summer. And he had 200 million to spend. And instead of just buying a normal good player, he bought Havertz. And Havertz is not good enough to be the striker, but also impacts us in midfield. And so I get the whole idea that, well, he begged for signings and we had injuries and stuff. But what about the 2022-2023 season? What about the 2023-2024 season? What about all the FA Cups? What about all the Carabao Cups? The context around the season doesn't explain why he hasn't won anything or gotten to any finals in 5 seasons. And so it's just wild to me. And I get that this is the narrative going around on X and YouTube for people that are staunch Arteta defenders, is that his hands were tied and Edu, sabotaged him. But was Edu sabotaging him when he begged the board to bring in Kai Havertz? No. So I don't feel sorry for him. I really don't. Like, you had the opportunity to do the right thing and you didn't do it. So I'm really not trying to hear that shit. Like, I'm really not trying to hear that shit. I'm so sorry. So yeah, I'm not trying to hear it. I'm just not trying to hear it. This particular season is kind of more of the worst case scenario of a season where we failed to prepare. And so it just is what it is. I don't know what to tell y'all. Cyprian says, I'll be real, until last season, I believed we could play every competition. Sammy says, Fabrizio still saying that RB trying to make a deal. Saying Arsenal are trying to be a deal. Okay, let me look. Well, then make the deal, man. So it's going to be Sesko then? That's fine, I guess. I just want it done. Our Arsenal and RB Leipzig began talks around 1 week ago. Arsenal's interest in Benjamin Sesko is serious. Okay. Cool. AD says, "It's do or die, honestly. I can't take another upset season. I had already said that the season prior." John says, "Even after the UCL final, the main topic after PSG was Arsenal. He's turning us into excuses FC." I mean, I didn't really understand this whole we beat them on XG, so that means anything. It really doesn't, beating somebody on XG. Because I was like, well, let me go back and rewatch the PSG game away from home. Because the Arsenal fans were saying that, they, first of all, PSG, I'm just going to say this very, very, very clear to the camera. PSG are better than us. So, and that's okay. Some teams are just better than you. We lost to a team that was better than us. It is what it is. I don't even think if we had our full team, we would have beat them. They are so good. They beat Liverpool. They beaten everyone. So I just think that they're better than us, and that's okay. But I think, first Arteta saying that we're the best team in the Champions League was horrendous. He should have never said that. It just came across so terribly. And people were saying we beat them on XG, and I'm like, yeah, I get that, but I remember the game. When you rewatch the game, because I rewatched the first half of that game, Kvaratskhelia hit the bar, like he hit the upright, and he had about this much space opening between Saliba and Timber, this much space, and he was able to find the upright with a shot that was so good, it was so powerful, but he only needed this much space. A chance like that is going to be a super low chance on XG because it's not basically a tap in, but really good attackers make small XG chances into almost certainties for goals. And so they had that. I remember they had like a almost wide open between Desiree Doué and Barcola, where Barcola messed it up, and it was basically like he could have just ended the game there, and he messed up the chance. They had loads of chances to bury us. Like it was not outside of like us trying to score, and Declan Rice missed a header that he absolutely should score. Martinelli misses a tap in that he absolutely should score. Odegaard hits the ball from outside the box and Donnarumma saves it, but it really did remove the context around them getting a lot of chances as well. And just when you watch it with your eyes, use your eye test, PSG are just better side, and that's okay. Like, I don't know why we have a hard time just saying that a team deserved to beat us or are better than us. It's fine. Like, we're not the best team in the world. Where are we getting this from? I don't get it. The only thing I really use XG for is just players, and are they outperforming their XG? Because to me, that's a good indication of whether or not you're a good goal scorer. Overperforming your XG is a good thing. Underperforming is a bad thing. But with games, I don't really look at it. John says, even the Premier League posted that the last time Arsenal had a striker scored below 10 goals was 1923-1924 season. That's crazy. Let's see. Boy says, if you get into positions where the goal is expected, then you get more XG. That doesn't, however, mean that we have the finishers to take advantage. I mean, you're probably like, we have the type of players that need really high XG chances to score, and they need lots of them because they're not clinical. And that doesn't mean that they're terrible players. It doesn't mean that, they're the worst players in the world. It just means that they're not clinical finishers, and they don't have that natural goal scoring ability to make small chances into big chances. To me, one of the best players that I ever saw, and I can say this now because he doesn't play for Spurs, but Kane was one of the best players to watch when you want to look at somebody that makes low XG chances into basically certain goals, because he just can do it. He just has the ability, and PSG's attackers have the ability that ours don't. And that's just where we need to get to, so we need to bring in players that can make those low chances, the 0.3s, whatever. We need 0.99% right at this rate, Johnny says, it means then they have weak minds. They finish that in training. I bet you everything I own. that they finish those in training. Conrad says you can change the players, but what does it matter if Arteta is going to manage the same way? He coaches with Everton tactics and mentality. 15 mil a year is crazy. Brian says, because if you actually talk about the game, it does not make our manager and players look amazing. The top gooners don't want that. And I just felt like it was strange. Like I like when it was like a joke, I thought it was funny. Like, oh, we beat this world-class, like, world beater PSG side, you know, on XG. But then people actually started taking it serious. And I was like, oh, this is getting dark. They actually are convincing themselves that we were better, and we don't know if we would have beat them with our full team. My opinion is no, their opinion is yes, and we will never know. So it's just opinions at the end of the day. But PSG, I just feel like they were just better than us, and that's okay. Obviously I'd want us to, if we came up against them next season, to do much better, but I just don't. We're not beating Inter on in the final, no 5-0. We're not wiping them. We would probably, it probably would have been a much closer game. It's fine. It's cool, Cyprian says they're just coping because we never win at the end of the season, end up sad. Theo says there's a 0.8 XG chance of Martinelli in the first leg where he is obviously offside. It counted for half of our XG in the first leg. We were not better. Abdullah says, if you have players who can't score low XG chances, then you bring in Cunha and Mbomo or create more chances. And I think Abdullah makes a really good point. And I feel like I've said this quite a few times. If you have the type of attackers that you have, then that are not clinical and can't score low XG chances, then you need to be creating like an MF. You need to be creating so many chances that they get 4 or 5 chances a game so they can score the 1 or 2, And that's essentially what we were doing with Jesus. I don't think we were incredibly clinical in that season. I think maybe some players were a little bit more clinical than they usually are and they were overperforming, but for the most part, we created so many chances that I also feel like that relaxed the players a little bit. When you're not clinical and you're only going to get one chance, what do? You get tense, you get scared because you know that this is going to be it. So I just feel like the environment that's created around our attackers right now is not suitable for them because they're not clinical. But, if you want to play this way where you're only creating chances off of corners and throw-ins and, they get the odd chance here and there, then the attackers need to be elite. They need to be elite. They need to be the type that can just thrive off of nothing. And right now we don't have that. So I think you're 100% correct in that. 88 miles per hour says, which shifts the pressure to the attacking mids to be more creative? Marco says, no way. We have Nelly in that pocket and Timber so high up against Inter. Mikel needs to look at that PSG first goal. I mean, well, first of all, look at the players that you mentioned. Timber that is my guy. Like, I love him. He is world class to me. But Hakimi versus Timber is very different. Timber does not have the attacking acumen of Hakimi. And they're kind of the inverse of each other. Hakimi is basically an attacker and Timber is basically a defender, right? They have different strengths. So I think it's also, Mikel can look at that first goal and try to replicate it with the players that we have. And we could use more movement in our team in general. But ultimately, if your fullbacks are not particularly attacking, then maybe your midfielders need to be more attacking. Something needs to give. You have 2 defensive midfielders, you have, fullbacks that aren't attacking, like something needs to give. You need to give your attacking midfielders more freedom and they need to be more creative. Like in their spirit, they need to be more creative, not just given license to be more creative. So he doesn't even have to do that with his fullback. He can do that with his midfielders, but he doesn't allow his midfielders to move and they're not particularly that creative. There's a lot of things moving against us to become more creative. AD says Krava destroyed Timber. If we're being honest, I was shocked. Probably first couple minutes, but I'll be honest, after that, he didn't do anything. Timber had his number after probably like the first 10 minutes or so. MLS and Timber got a hold of that that first leg, that first game, after about the first 10 minutes after they were shocked from the first goal. But if Timber can't handle Krava, nobody can, and I think he probably had like 0 dribbles after those first 10 minutes. Blaze says, I think the reason some of our fan base using XG excuses to protect Arteta, I can understand we can love manager, but at the same time, we also have to have constructive criticism, not agenda about him. And I agree, like there is some things that I don't agree with that I think people are just once we're not in a good moment, it's very acceptable to just throw any sort of criticism at the wall and see if it sticks because nobody will pull you up on it because once we're in the negative spiral, it's like, okay, well, I can just say anything, and it's true because we're in the negativity spiral. But I just think, I think it's a valid criticism that the way that we play doesn't necessarily suit the attackers that we have, and we could be much more creative. And the system and the way that it plays doesn't really create a lot of chances. And so I think that that's okay criticism. And any other time that you would have that critique, that would go back on the manager. But there's a reluctance, I think, to put any sort of like blame onto him. But just because you criticize the manager doesn't mean you don't like him or you want him out. But it seems like that's kind of the direction that we've gone in. So I agree with you. I feel like the constructive criticism is just looking at the game, and there's nothing wrong with saying that he needs to modify his system so that we can be more creative, or, he needs to allow the players to have a little bit more freedom, or allow Saka and the other winger to not defend as much. Like that doesn't mean that Arteta is the worst coach in the world, you know? Johnny says the rest of the players 100%, meaning XG is not an excuse, it's reality. Manager's job is done on the given game day. If you have XG and the opposition doesn't against you, that's the ideal managerial Mortal Kombat finish. But PSG had XG against us, so it was not the perfect managerial job. It was good. 88 miles per hour says Hakimi is an attacker 100%. He played at right midfield while at Inter Milan. He also played at Madrid. Yeah, I think Hakimi's just a completely different type of player. Mohammed says if Calafiori starts with White as an overlapping fullbacks, we can play Rice and Zubi double pivot and free and there is scope for, if we want to be more attack minded or, whatever. If we're playing up against a deep block, you probably maybe want to use Calafiori and White because they're White is a better passer than Timber. So maybe you don't need Timber's like bombastic defending. Maybe you need somebody that's a little bit more refined on the ball. So there's options. Arteta just has to take them. But it would be nice to have some more overlaps, wouldn't it? Because it would make it easier on the attackers. And right now it's like, it's really hard for them to score a goal, like real hard for them to score a goal. John says, do you think Rice's signing was a waste considering the fact that he was meant to be our DM? Then we could have brought a proper 8. Well, we could have bought a proper 8, whether we bought Declan Rice or not. I know that the main thing you're going to look at is Declan Rice when it's like he was our biggest signing in that summer. And because he's not being utilized in the 6, it's like, oh, he was a waste of money. But I think when people do up like, oh, well, Havertz was our best player. And so it makes sense that we bought him because why are he was so great in the run-in. There has not been a single player, in my opinion, that's been more impactful to Arsenal's biggest games and biggest moments than Declan Rice since he signed. Not a single person. Havertz may have, papered over the cracks of not having Jesus and scored some good goals during the back end of last season, but there hasn't been a single player in this team that has made a bigger difference in the big games than Declan Rice. And for me, that's unquantifiable. That's not something that I would ever want to give up. You could have still bought a top class number 8 with the money that you spent on Kai Havertz. So I think, yes, I am concerned that we spent 100 million on a player and we're playing him in a position that doesn't suit him, but that's the Arteta special. Arteta special is buying a player and thinking that he can coach them into something completely different. But the things that Declan Rice has given us in the last 2 years for me are things that if we had the other players as well, we would win things because it's not even just like what he does on the ball, it's just his attitude, the way that he applies himself, the way he gets up for big games where some of our players are flat and scared, he's not. To me, that was never a waste of 100 million. You could have gotten a top class number 8 with the money that you spent on Kai Havertz. And so no, I don't think that he was a waste of money. I think Kai was a waste of money, and that's not nice to say, but I think the 100 million was more well spent on Declan Rice and what we got. It's just a shame that we weren't able to underpin that signing with, a player that was maybe closer to Xhaka or even a striker or an attacker, but we just did fuck all with that money and just gave the 65 million away, in my opinion. So it's just crazy. Rida says Rice is our biggest big game player, always turns up to the occasion, love him. And that's Declan Rice with his skill set, in my opinion, I would say is like probably worth like 70 million, right? In this market, English tax and all that, 70 million. But the extra 30 million is the intangibles. And unfortunately, I know people don't like the intangibles because it's like it's not something that you can look at on stats. But the biggest difference between Declan Rice and a lot of our other players is his mentality. And that is something that you cannot teach. And that is very expensive in the game, especially for a club that lacks real like dog. Outside of Gabriel, I think Rice is the only other player that I look at that no matter who we're playing, City or whoever, or whatever big team, shows up with the type of mentality that's necessary for a big team to win on a consistent basis. And so he was worth every penny. It's just a shame that we haven't been able to complete the rest of it. He was begging for forwards, and it's probably because he can look at it just like everyone else, and it's like, we just need a freaking striker and another attacker, and we'd be much better, But yeah, Kimberly says Rice and Big Gabby walk the talk. They do. They just get it. John says because Rice moved to the 8, we now have 2 DMs, whereas we could have had Rice plus an 8 and a 10 by now. Agreed. If it was me, this is also the issue, is that it's not so much that we wasted money on Rice, because let's take aside what I just said and erase that. Rice to me is worth 100 million, but if you are not going to change your system to suit Rice playing in the 6, then you got problems. And that's essentially where the issues arise, is Arteta wasn't going to change his system to suit Rice to play in the 6, which he needed to, I feel like, to get the most you could have gotten out of Rice. There is a way that you can play with Declan Rice in the 6. He plays in the 6 all the time for England, but he needs more technical players ahead of him that can also maintain the shape, if that makes sense. So somebody like a Reinders, I think, would be perfect. Attacking number 8, Bruno Guimaraes, attacking number 8, somebody that has an all-around game, not a lightweight number 10, not the Emils and those types of guys, but like real men in front of him that but can also score goals and pick a pass. The McAllisters, the Bruno G's, and the Reinders, those types of players. We didn't do that. And so he had so much responsibility and build up. And we're so reliant upon that number 6 to help with the build up and set the tempo and all that kind of stuff, because nobody else can do it, that it was kind of an odd fit. So Arteta had to retroactively go back to the 6 that he knows well. And so now we're using Declan Rice in the 8. To me, it's all about the way Arteta uses him. So yeah, because he would be playing in the 8 or in the 6 for me. So yeah, I don't see in Mboma Bamba. So I don't know where Mboma to United, according to Ornstein. Well, that's pretty devastating. I can't lie. Again, United are moving a lot more seriously than we are, and they finished low on the table. So what about us? Abomo decides he wants to join United. That is dark. The likes of AFC, Newcastle, and Tottenham all interested, but he favors Old Trafford. That is fucking crazy. I mean, it is dark. It's crazy because now I have to pretend like I think he's shit. Johnny says, Mbomo gets the bag. I'm happy for him. Mohammed says, one of Arteta's first signings was Thomas Partey, and we can see how important he is for Arteta. He would never buy Rice thinking of the sixth position. Well, that's not what Arteta said. I mean, there's plenty of reports out there that said Rice in the six. He can also play eight, so he clearly bought him for that too. He's not the only forward available. This doesn't break this out this summer. It does show that United have pull and won't take ages to come back with the right man in charge. It's dark. John says Berta needs to realize the Prem moves way faster in transfers. They have 2 signings done already. This is what I'm saying about people saying things like, "Oh, but the window just opened. It's only been a day." Yes, I understand that, but that's not stopping anybody else from making moves, not anyone else. We're still talking about talking to Sesko. Why can't you walk and chew gum at the same time? It's crazy. It's dark. Rohit says, damn, the new hair making me reprioritize my affinity for Kate Scott. Okay. Kimberly says, maybe Arsenal doesn't know the transfer window is open. This is the thing. Like, obviously the window just opened, but everyone else is moving. And I really want these players in before preseason, but Arsenal don't. So I guess so. But Mbomo, it was nice knowing you. It was nice knowing you, buddy. There's just no way I can support you now. So you went to literally the worst possible place you could have went. 88 miles per hour says, I hope Arsenal don't sign Anthony and Garnacho. And another thing too is like, it's like a sidebar. I think the sooner you make signings, the quicker you can put a bad season behind you. I guarantee that United fans are not thinking about their poor season anymore because they have signings coming in so they can start thinking about the next season. And we are still stuck in this season because we haven't done anything. So Arsenal, please, for the love of God, just get something over the line. But those are 2 really good signings for United. They're Prem proven, they're creative, they score goals. Fair play to them. They still have pull, even though they've been dog shit. So, yeah, it's my worst nightmare, but it is what it is. Says that's a good signing for United Fairs. Can't believe I have to hate on Mbomo. I mean, from this day forward, he's never been that good. If you guys know me, you know that this is paining me because I love him so much, but whatever. Already United getting together a scary forward line. They have a better attack than us. Wow. Now they do for sure. I don't even know who's playing up front, but Mbomo, Cunha, and whoever the fuck else is definitely better than Havertz and Martinelli. So, yeah. Wild. Octavio says, my biggest fear is that we miss out on our targets, then spend the rest of the summer chasing rumors, only end up with Sterling on loan again. Let's go for Wissa. Arsenal need to wake up. We don't even have Zubi confirmed. What the actual F? John says, all this waiting for Berta to pull the Sterling stunt. Man, it is dark. I never really 100% felt like we would get him just because he's going to want to start. And he can start somewhere. I just thought he might choose Newcastle because he can be in Champions League. They must be paying him a lot of wages. I just don't see a reason why he would choose Manchester United over Newcastle unless it was, the affinity towards the club or they're paying him more. But fair enough. It is dark. That is pain. That is pain. Kimberly says the Nkuku jokes now seeming real. 88 miles an hour says Arsenal under the duvet covers. The Arsenal perspective says, why are we always talking about the same inadequacies of Arsenal? This is so boring. Get a grip and get some players in. But this is what I'm saying. Like, everybody else is active trying to, because we couldn't do it last summer because of the Euros. But this summer, people want to get their players in at for preseason early. And Arsenal are going to do their same bullshit because they probably don't feel pressure to get them in early because they know they're going to start with Martinelli and Kai Havertz up front. So they're just like, well, we're fine. This is why I'm saying, like, they need to have shame and embarrassment. They need to feel like this last summer window and season was a failure and like damn near unprofessional, So then they feel like they need to fight against it and actually improve. But every year when you say, well, we made progress and it's fine and we're good and, just be patient, it gives off this feeling of like they're not fucking for real, and I just need them to get going. I know it's the first day of the window or the second day of the window, but that's not stopping anyone else, but it's sure stopping us. John says we pay the highest ticket prices in Europe and they repay us with the painful transfer windows. Not a single window since the Jesus window have we acted quick. Not a single window since the Jesus window. When we got Jesus, we knew that we were getting him before the season even ended, and he was there way before. Like, he was there the first day of preseason, the first game he played. And then Zinchenko started playing like the next game after that. And we knew, like, we don't know shit this window. We don't know shit this window. It's dark. It's dark, my friends. So yeah. Blessing says it's dark, gloomy, melancholy, bleak peak. Chagoon says time to start thinking of slander names. Unfortunately, how about Mbozo? Listen, pains me to have to kick my guy to the curb, but he's getting kicked down that curb. There is no way I can support him now. But yeah, Mbozo will do. Kai's transfer was insanely fast. Tears, because they couldn't believe their luck. They could not believe their luck that Arsenal were dying to give them money for this guy. That is so crazy. It's just wild to me. Jonathan says, why would he go United over Newcastle? Wages, or he just has an affinity towards the club. I don't know. 88 miles an hour says Arteta signed Kai's personal trainer. I mean, we are just, so many of our freaking fans just keep posting clips of Sesko and shit, and I'm just tired of looking at it. Like, I'm tired of looking at it. I want to see the player actually signing for us, bro. It's crazy. Kimberly says, and the timeline is such a mess. They really like us suffer. The brand. Blessing says, Arteta has something for tall people. Don't know what it is. Damon says, you're getting on like they signed on the dotted line. Every single player linked to somebody. Arsenal are known to keep their business very quiet. Give Berta a chance. Are they known for keeping everything very quiet? I think that this is a little bit of a lie that we tell ourselves because we want to believe that they're doing something behind the scenes. But when we were signing Declan Rice, were they quiet? No, they weren't. When we were signing Jesus, were we quiet? No, not really. So the big signings were loud for sure. The smaller signings, yeah, like we didn't know about Zinchenko until we failed with Lissandro. And then Zinchenko kind of came out of nowhere after that, but most of the time I feel like we pretty much fucking know, Dio says Sesko is good. Sane, no. Kimberly says, I thought Berta used links. That's what we were told. No, they just be saying whatever. Dragoon says the only quiet signing was Timber. The rest are always out there. Theo says Arteta's pool, specifically offensive pool, I'm starting to seriously question. Remy says, like how long we have been linked with Zubi and still not official, we better get one of Sesko or Gyökeres. Vieira was insanely quiet. Vieira was quiet. Timber was quiet. Jesus was not. Odegaard was not. Tommy was quiet. Ben White was not. Ramsdale was not. Rice was not. Timber was quiet. Kai Havertz happened like in a day. Kiviors was quiet. It's mixed. It's mixed, I feel. MM says, what happened to Rodrigo links? Same thing that happened with the El Canus links and the all the links. They go. I think it's mixed. I think it's mixed. The Arsenal perspective says Arsenal do not keep things quiet. They have lacked the edge since David Dean. Wow, I really don't see us coming back to a classy dominant position with this club. I really don't. I always call you boy, but Dio. Rodrigo links weren't real guys. Kimberly says, I see a pattern here. Quiet on defenders. We are getting a defender for sure. And Rodrigo is the new Benzema for us. I mean, that is just, and Ornstein is really quiet on us too. Like there is nothing happening for us right now. And then looking at like City signed up Marmoush in the summer, and now they're signing Shirky. They have Reinders. This lineup that's going around for City, we cannot compete. I want Arsenal fans to be so fucking for real right now. If this is the window and this is what they go with next summer, they are going to blam 99% of the teams in this league. Yep. Excuse me. They signed Marmoush and Jan. I said that, but like essentially what people are projecting Man City's lineup to be is Costa in goal, Livramento, Diaz, Gavardiol, Ait-Nouri, a pivot of Reinders and Rodri, Marmoush on the left, Foden in the 10, Shirky on right wing, and Holland. Now, how are we meant to compete with that if we don't actually start getting some players? Yo-Yo says, when are players expected to report back for duty? When does the tour start? When does the Emirates Cup start? When does the Prem start? Only dates that matter for deadlines and checkpoints. I mean, for preseason, I think also I get that we just need to make sure that we have our players in for preseason, but we know it takes us 2 months to get a single player in. Let's see. Maybe they're waiting for Zuma. Is Zubamendi with Spain? Because maybe that's why we haven't heard anything about him, but I just know Arsenal take a long time. So, preseason starts what? July? It's dark. Let's see. Yeah. July 23rd, we play AC Milan in Singapore, but they're going to be like training and stuff before that, probably mid-July. So it is early June, and probably in mid-July, we'll start to see players coming back in, right? Let's see. Johnny says, yeah, it's probably going to be a 3-way title fight. Most probably. We're not going to be in it. Dial says, we need 5 players coming in. Brap says, Inzaghi to Al Hilal. Yeah, he didn't sound like he was going to stay after that final. And I don't think he can after the season. That was pretty bad, man. So he has to go. Let's see. Nocturnal says the light has gone out in your eyes. This club is killing my friend. It's gone. I'm just done. The 88 miles per hour says I think Liverpool become favorites next season. The Arsenal perspective says if Arsenal think the likes of Tottenham, United, even Everton and West Ham won't improve their squads, not to mention the usual suspects of Liverpool and City and Chelsea, then I don't know what to tell them. Redemption says, I already knew, just based on who we were likely to get. We'll finish third or fourth. Fighting with Chelsea in the league isn't even a debate. We're not in the title fight. Travis says Williams is staying with Atletico, with Bilbao. I mean, Matt Law is saying that nobody is signing him because of his wages and the fee. And I think what our biggest problem is like, we know we're about to spend a shit ton of money on Sesko. And so if you're going to spend like, and who knows how much RB Leipzig won up front, because the whole reason why they waited to sell Sesko and get him on the new deal is because I think they expected to sell him for 100 million. And he hasn't, like, they didn't have a great season, and I don't think there's as much interest in him as they wanted. So they're probably going to sell around 67 to 75 million, but they're going to want to beef up everything with the package, and then probably also going to ask for quite a bit up front. If that's the case, we're not going to be able to bring in Nico Williams because they want the whole fee up front. And that's the biggest difference is we're like every other team, we want to pay in installments. We want to pay, just like 10 million up front or whatever. If we have to pay the full 60 million up front, that's a big chunk of our budget. So, and they still are going to want to get a fucking defender and a goalkeeper. So Nico Williams is probably out of the question unless he like changes the wages or something changes. Jonathan says, I will never believe when people say United are broke now. Blaze says, I can't lie. Right now, mood and our fans are not nice. This is sad. I mean, listen, it's early in the window and we always work quiet. And so, of course, there's things happening behind the scenes. I just think, I just want to put the season behind us. And it's hard to when it feels like you're just continuing on the same season because nothing is changing. And like I said, United fans are not thinking about the fact that they finished they're not thinking about the fact that they finished damn near doing the relegation zone. They're not. They're thinking about how good they're going to be next season with Mbomo and Cunha. I'm telling you, like City aren't thinking about their poor season. They're thinking about Reinders and Shirky and what they can do with those players. Like by the time Arsenal signs some players, I don't know. I just want to turn the page on this season. It just feels like it's still continuing. Perspective says, give me one more Arteta presser now so we can ask him what the F is going on. He won't tell you. Yo-Yo says, a managerial change would get me excited, but that's just me. I wouldn't mind either. Just end it. Just pop the balloon. It's just too much pressure now. And because you just also, like, if you have a bad summer or we take a really long time to get the players in, the pressure that's going to be like the pressure is already going to be horrible, but you want the players to get in early so that you can get a little bit of like good form and good connections and stuff during preseason so that you start off the season well and you're not under duress. I guarantee we will have a really difficult start to the season. We usually do. We usually have really hard games at the beginning and really hard games at the end. And so if you don't win all of those first games in the first 10 games, it's going to get hostile. It's already hostile. Like Arsenal need to think outside of like whatever they're thinking inside this whole, like, we're not under pressure and it's fine. Relax. Like we have all this time and space. It's okay. Like nobody else is going to improve. We're just going to get better, whatever. Like I guarantee they think that if we had all of our players fit, that we would have won the league. I guarantee that that's what they think. Like they just feel very almost arrogant, like humble. Just for 1 second, just humble yourself and get players in early and have shame. United have shame. City have shame. Everyone has shame but us. OGN D Brown, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, thanks for the insight. Keep it up. Alex says, Arsenal apparently want to only pay the salaries when they meet up with the team, likely why we are pouncing on everything. So we're waiting until right before preseason so we don't have to pay them. Okay. Mohammed says, at this rate, we're in a top 4 battle. Lesson says, I think it's time to change sports and raise the white flag. Marco says, United moving the same as last season, though. They won the summer window last. These are good players, though. Like, it's not like buying Ugarte, and De Ligt and these types of people that are just like, I don't know, did any of you guys think that those players were gonna change their fortunes? Because I didn't. Like, washed, Delit, they were trying to convince us that Delit wasn't who we thought he was. He failed at Juventus, and they couldn't wait to get him out of Bayern because he's not that good, and he wasn't that good for you guys either. These players, I actually think are really good, and they're Premier League proven. It's different, but yeah. Keenan says, if Cunha, Gyökeres, and Bomo go to United, then they will be banging goals for fun. Johnny D says, in spite of playing worse than them, Jesus was bagging Jess. If he'd been fit, we would have been closed the gap to Liverpool a bit. You don't believe it. I do. If no injuries, no referee idiocy, yes, we would have been right next to Pool. It's just a lot of ifs, a lot of things that are kind of out of our control. I just feel like it's a little bit far-fetched. We might have been closer, but I still think like even with our best team available to us for the majority of the season last season, we still found a way to finish 2 points less, because the biggest thing that our biggest problem is we don't score goals when we need to. And that doesn't change with both Havertz and Jesus available. They both choke whenever we need to score a goal in a big game. The Arsenal perspective says, watch this space. United finally have the right man in the dugout. They give him what he wants, and you see them power up the league table again. They won't take 3 years to come back. Hypotheticals will always be used to defend Arteta. Dio says, I will be vexed if United overtake us, man. I mean, it will be death, but I mean, the closest people that we have to worry about is Chelsea, because they're not as far as we think they are, and they're definitely going to buy players too. And you see, like, Man United lost out on Delap, but they just are moving along and just buying players and bringing them in. We can only buy one player at a time. We can only focus on one position at a time. We can only get one player in every 2 months. Like, it's so slow. Like, it's just so slow, and it's going to impact our season. It does. Like, the quickness in which you get things done is not about vanity and about bragging to your friends that are on other teams. It's about getting them in for preseason. So, yeah, we shall see. Jonathan says they surely can't get Gyökeres. You better hope that Gyökeres, if he doesn't come to us, he ends up going to a different league, because if he ends up banging in our league, whew, I'm telling you, the beginning of next season could get dark depending on who everybody gets and how we start. Yo-Yo says, since Arteta has been here, we've never been able to dance on our rivals' graves. Arsenic says, we move so slow in the window, it's embarrassing. John says, I know the players are also vexed with the way Arsenal moving slow. If your players are actually begging you to buy players, how embarrassing is that? Declan Rice coming into, a press conference or, an interview and saying we need to get players, and I'm sure we will. It's embarrassing. This past season was the way that we started it in the window that we had was basically like, to me, it was unprofessional. Like, it was whoever did it should have gone, because it just wasn't the type of window, one, that was promised, or two, that said anything like we wanted to win. Nothing, so. And then we ended up having a summer window that reflected, or a season that reflected that summer window. And yeah, your players having to come out and say that they need players is embarrassing. I wonder what the group chat was saying. Keenan says, thoughts on Semenyo? He's young and improving massively every season. He can use both feet. If that's who we end up with after all of this is Semenyo, I will not be there. Semenyo is not good enough to play for Arsenal. The people that were advocating for him earlier on in the season were saying that they didn't even believe he was a starter. He would be a good player for the squad. If he's just a good player for the squad, why would we get him? And also Bournemouth want like 70 million for this guy. That is a robbery if I've ever seen it. So no Semenyo. Go get one of the top talents in Europe, please. Please don't spend way more on Premier League proven talent that is incredibly average and underwhelming. No, no, no. Rainmaker says, Jess in chat, which signing will make you feel very optimistic about the upcoming season? No, no. Williams, Sesko, an attacking mid. Like those, I don't even care if we get a defender or a backup goalkeeper because I don't care who they are. Like I really don't. But um those 3 signings would make me a little bit excited, but only if they get them in early because if they take up like nobody's going to be excited if we get them like right before the season starts and we're starting off the season and it's difficult season with the same players. John says deep down we're getting Semenyo. If we get Semenyo, I won't be there. He's just not good enough for Arsenal. Boy says if we get Matoma, I know we're gonna have a good season. The Arsenal perspective says, I'm sorry guys, we need needle pushers. Pause. Enough of lateral movements. We need exponential improvements. Get it? Exponential improvements. Yes. Brian says, honestly, I think the fan base has never recovered from the end of the Wenger days. We have a very split fan base of damn near cult followers and pessimists. I think that's why winning now is important. I cannot believe that we don't even have any like secure links and movement yet. Like the season has been over for us for a while now. Like, because we weren't playing in any of these finals. Some of these teams played in finals and we've been done. And it's just like, bruh, like, come on. But whatever, man. Blessing says Semenyo starts for Arsenal, though. He is a Martinelli upgrade. He's not that good. He's not that good. He just plays for another team. And, you know, he doesn't have any pressure on him. He's not playing in Europe, you know, because towards the back end of the season wasn't nobody talking about Semenyo. Nobody. He was something like a topic before January because we were desperate, and he stays in the desperate January category for me. He's just not good enough. You can't get Semenyo when Nico Williams is available. Like you just can't. I'm sorry. Ify says, not Semenyo, please. I was desperate for Mbomo to play on the right wing if we can't get Nico, but that's over. Chris says, I desperately want to be wrong, but genuinely think we've missed our window. We should have won things over the last 2 seasons. We didn't. And now I don't think we will this season. Like missing multiple summer windows and like big misses with signings has really it's set us back. So they need to have a big window. That's kind of the only like thing I can really say is they need a big window. They need to look at the way that football is changing. This whole thing that we're doing with the stiff suffer ball needs to end, and we need to inject some fun, some life, some creativity, some goal scoring, some X factor into this team. And you guys promised a big window, an exciting window. Everybody's talking about exciting window. I'm not excited by a window where the main people coming in are going to be goalkeepers and defenders. So you better have something up your sleeve. You need to get going. Your rivals are catching up and they're doing stuff, and it's long, you know. So anybody who's not concerned, I think you're not a real fan. I'm going to say it right now. Anybody who's a real fan is concerned right now because you know Arsenal are capable of having a terrible window. You know, all this nonsense about it's just the beginning of the window and there's so much time. You know how it goes, you know. So whew, it's just terrible, you know. So hopefully we get a move on. But listen, there's 1,700 of you guys watching on all platforms. Make sure you like and subscribe on your way out. I'm going to mourn the loss of Brian Mbomo because I will no longer be able to support him as a player. And we will talk tomorrow, and hopefully we'll have something fun to talk about because there'll be actually things getting done. So yeah, like and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye, guys.